the third wave of RFID, this is what we're all living today. So what I thought we would do today is start out and talk a little bit about bananas. So in 1893, Sam Zimmery was 15 years old. He made his first trip down to Mobile, Alabama, and he saw the banana docks that were being offloaded off the steamships coming from Central America, right off onto the dock there. Now, Sam was born in Moldova. I do not know geography very well, so I had to look this up. But Moldova is somewhere right between the middle of Romania and Ukraine. Essentially, it's Russian. He was from a Jewish community there. And when he was an early teen, he moved to Selma, Alabama in the early 1890s and lived with his uncle there. As soon as he got to Alabama, he decided it was time to make his fortune. And the way he figured he was going to do it was down in Mobile on the docks. At the time, bananas were a relatively exotic fruit in the United States. This was a new thing. What would happen is the banana boats would come in from Central America and they would park there in the dock in Mobile, and they would offload their banana crop to be distributed throughout the United States. Now, as you can imagine, refrigerated shipping and trucking wasn't what it is back in the late 1800s as today. So a lot of those bananas wouldn't make it. So what would happen is whenever the boats would unload, if any of the bananas were already yellow, they were considered ripes, and they would either dump those straight back into the water, they would dump them out on the shore there. They were no good because they could not get them to the store before they would go bad. 15-year-old Sam saw this as an opportunity. The banana companies, particularly the United Fruit Company, which was the big company at the time, was very focused on the big picture. We had to sacrifice some of the individual units because we had to get the majority of the stuff where we needed to go. We did not have time to focus down on those individual units. Sam saw this as an opportunity. So what Sam did is he scraped together as much money as he could buy, and he bought those ripes for pennies on a dollar since they were being thrown away anyway. He rented a boxcar, he loaded the boxcar up with bananas, and he drove that boxcar back up to his hometown in Selma. Now at the time, that was about a 6-hour trip. But even then, some of those bananas would go bad before they got there. So what he would do is he would set up stops all along the way when the train stopped at all those little towns, and he would have the grocers come out and meet him, and he would sell bananas right out of the side of the boxcar itself. Sam made a whole lot of trips up and down the railroad tracks, and everyone called him Sam the Banana Man. He did so well at this, but by the time he was 19 years old, he had over $100,000 in the bank. Now, that's back in the late 1800s. Today, that's about $3 million from riding the rails and selling bananas. That's pretty good work from an immigrant who just moved into the U.S. Now, the first wave of RFID that we had was for all intents and purposes in 2005. So a lot of you all were here with us at that time, and a lot of you all have kind of heard about this in the past. You'll hear people talk about they've been in RFID for 40 years, but for all intents and purposes in 05, that was the year that everything broke big for RFID. And what we thought at the time, it was really Walmart that was pushing this, is that RFID was going to be something that was going to completely change the supply chain. RFID was very different than where we are today. We didn't focus on individual units and individual items. What we focused on was the pallets and the cases. We were tagging those pallets, we were tagging those cases. And the thought process was that RFID was going to be the replacement for the barcode. It was the next generation barcode. The idea was at all those points throughout the supply chain, when we were capturing those barcodes from those cases and the pallets, we were going to put RFID scanners in there and do that same level of data capture. This was going to change everything. What we found at the time was that the technology works okay, especially at the case and the pallet level. And we could replace a lot of those barcode scanners all throughout the supply chain with RFID scanners. But really, it didn't get us that much at a lot of the points upstream in the supply chain, because at the time, we already had data from those points. If you're changing a barcode scanner to an RFID scanner, yes, we're getting the data maybe a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient, and a slightly better format for us, but we already had that data and we were already acting on it whenever we could. What we learned very quickly is the points where RFID gave us data that we could not see, the things that we did not have access to in the past, right? Particularly in the store. So the big use case at the time and the big push was the front room and the back room of the retail store itself. So it's hard to remember, looking back just 15, 16 years ago, but at that time in 2005, almost no one kept inventory by front stock and back stock. At that time, most retailers kept an overall inventory count for their whole store. It was the big picture, right? We had stuff in the store, but a lot of times inventory would get stranded in the back room. So if we have 5 in the store, but they're all 5 sitting in the back of the store, we have no way for a customer to go back there and access them, right? We focused on the big picture, but we lost a lot of the individuals along the way. With RFID, we were able to see exactly what was in the front and what was in the back, and we were able to influence out of stocks. Because keep in mind, in 2005, this was also very, very early in the customer's ability to see the inventory in the store, to make online purchases, to make open purchases, things like that. Really, if you wanted to buy something, you're going to have to go in the store and pick it out on the shelf and take it home with you. So it was crucial that we had the ability to divide that inventory, to split that between front stock and back stock, and to know exactly what was going on. So what we did when we applied RFID to those stores is we kept the big picture, which is fine. It's good to know our inventory everywhere. We were able to focus down on those individuals, and that's how we found the benefit, pulled the benefit out of RFID in the supply chain. And what we found is that what we had going at that time wasn't sustainable. We're not still doing case and pallet level RFID in the full supply chain. We may go back there someday, but we learned how to focus on the stuff that was really important, which is in the store. Just like Sam, he didn't ride the railroad tracks for the rest of his life, even though he made a lot of money doing that. He took that money and he reinvested it. So let's move on to the second wave. In around 1909, Sam had taken all the money that he had gained from the railroad system of selling his bananas, and he had bought some banana farms on the northern shores of the Honduras down in Central America. Sam was the kind of person who liked to go out there and get things done himself. So he got on his first boat down to his new farms, and he learned how to farm bananas. He worked alongside the farmers there in the country. He worked alongside the guys loading the boats that were taking them back to the U.S., and he worked alongside the distribution networks whenever he got there. Sam had a saying that he liked to bring up over and over again. They're there, and we're here. We're down here figuring out how to get it done. We're in it. We know how our business works, and that's how we want to compete. Now, at that time, as he built his business, bananas were an extremely low margin business. You can imagine that they are now, especially, but especially back then when we didn't have much refrigeration and things like that going on as well. So the way that he built his business and the way that he was able to compete against the larger fruit companies like United is he had a significant number of tax and tariff exemptions from the government of Honduras. This made him profitable. But what happened in 1909 was Honduras ended up owing about $120 million to Great Britain. They were in really bad shape financially. And owing that much money to the Great Britain, everyone got a little bit concerned that eventually they were going to come to collect. The United States was extremely concerned about this. So the Secretary of the State at the time, Philander Knox, worked out a deal with J.P. Morgan. So J.P. Morgan's company would go down to the Honduras. They would essentially take over the bureaucracy of the country of the Honduras. They would take over the taxes, the ports, the tariffs, and the railroad systems, and they would directly collect taxes from the people of the Honduras, and they would make sure that Great Britain's debt was paid off, and they would make a little bit for themselves on the side. Now, Sam was called into a meeting with the Secretary of State to talk about what this meant for his Creamel Fruit Company on the northern shores of Honduras. And Philander Knox explained to him in no uncertain terms that the national interest of the United States and the financial interest of Great Britain and of J.P. Morgan were much greater than those of the Creamel Fruit Company. So it was time for him to pack it up and take his business home. Sam did go home. He went a little further, right down to New Orleans, where it just so happened that the ex-president of Honduras was living in exile. He bought him a boat, the Hornet, which you see here, and he filled it up with 100 mercenaries from bars all over New Orleans and shipped them right back down to Honduras. In the meantime, he started spreading propaganda around the country about how the people there felt about J.P. Morgan taking over their country and shipping the money back to Great Britain themselves. By the end of the next month, Honduras had a new president. Sam had his concessions and his business back. J.P. Morgan's folks were on a boat back home to the United States, and the Honduras debt to Great Britain was canceled. This was a situation where someone on the ground was able to see what was going on and influence the situation that was heading in a bad direction. And the second wave of RFID came around 2010. So at that time, we were heavily focused and invested in item level RFID. We had moved on from the case and the pallet level work, and we were really getting down and figuring out how we were going to put RFID tags on individual units. Now, item level RFID came about in the retail stores, and the reason that it really took off in the Dillards, the Pennies, and the Macy's, the Walmart, Target, all of these other folks, Marks and Spencer and Inditex and others all throughout Europe, was because we were learning how to deal with the early phases of omnichannel. Customers were learning how to access visibility to inventory on the websites. They were learning how to direct orders and omnichannel orders. We had some very early attempts at BOPUS. We were trying to figure out how we were going to engage with these stores in an online world with a physical space. And what we were learning the hard way is our inventory accuracy was poor. And we weren't going to fix that inventory accuracy by throwing more people to go out there and continue to count these stores more regularly and add more bad data back to our systems, especially when we were bringing outside folks doing external audits every 6 months. We're not going to fix the inventory accuracy by having them come every 3 months, every 1 month, every 2 months and shut down and disrupt our store. Well, we walked out there and hand counted and hand counted and hand counted. The path we were on was not going the right place. We needed a significant disruptive change to the way that we handled inventory accuracy in our stores. And the way that we did that was through RFID cycle counts. And that was the first big boom of RFID counts at the item level, which has continued to this day. As we sit, about a third of the overall apparel market will be RFID tags going globally. And we've been steadily picking up ever since those initial pilots that kicked off in 2010 and those expansion plans. Now, it hasn't gone as fast as a lot of people liked. There's been a few hiccups along the way, but I think that speaks to the resiliency of the solution. It's because we were able to survive all those challenges and we were able to build to exactly where we are today. We were stuck in a situation where things weren't going to be able to continue as they were. But we found a unique way to get around that, which is rethinking the way that we handled inventory accuracy, which is building to where we are now. So let's talk about the third wave. And this is the last story I'll tell you about Sam Zimmery. By 1930, Sam's Clean Fruit Company had become such a pain in the butt for United Fruit that they decided to just buy him out completely. They didn't want to compete with him anymore. They just wanted him out of the business. They didn't want to have to deal with his competition. So they did. They handed him a pile of stock in the United Fruit Company. They handed him a non-compete clause that essentially said, Sam, we're going to give you a whole bunch of money. We're going to take over your business. They didn't even want the business. They just didn't want to have to compete with him anymore. You can't go work for any competitors, and you can't start a fruit company of your own. So Sam went home. At that time, United Fruit Company shares were worth about $100 per share. Now, United Fruit Company was run out of Boston, and most of the directors of United Fruit Company came from the elite of Boston at the time. These were multi-generational wealthy families. Some of them could trace their lineage back to the beginning of the American Revolution. These were the folks who ran their business from a boardroom as exporters. None of them went down there to go see what was going on at the coast, or none of them were directly involved or engaged in the shipping process. Sam used to always say, we're here and they're there. That didn't pertain. So by 3 years later, in 1933, the stock shares had dropped from about $100 a share to about $10 per share. Sam wanted to help. He said it was a shame that the greatest company in the world should go to hell in a handbasket because people aren't paying attention to what's going on. So he was finally able to get a meeting with the board of directors of the United Fruit Company. So Sam went in with a carefully prepared presentation, and what he told them was that he felt like they need to get down there on the ground. They need to trust their managers. They need to talk to their people. They need to give them the tools to figure out the problems and see exactly what was going on. They need to restructure and revamp their supply chain. They need to focus on the fundamentals to try to turn the business back around. When he got to the end of his presentation, he did not realize that the people that were sitting in that room were not listening to what was being said, but who was saying it. Sam had a very thick Yiddish accent when he moved to the United States. So when he finished his presentation, the president or the chairman of the board said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Zimmery, to I can't understand a single word you're saying. The rest of the board thought this was pretty funny. What they didn't realize is in the few weeks leading up to that meeting, Sam had been going around collecting proxies from the rest of the shareholders from the United Fruit Company, who were also tired of the way things were being run. So Sam took the bag of proxies, he dropped it on the table in front of the board, and he said, "Fire, you understand that?" And that is how Sam ended up taking over United Fruit Company. Now, the third wave of RFID, I don't have to tell you a lot of history of what's going on because you're all living that right now. We've been in the middle of it ever since COVID hit back in 2019. It's like an angry toddler is in charge of global supply chain, just throwing things on and off and here and there and yonder. And our customers, who we were kind of pushing towards these new techniques and new systems for omni-channel or multi-channel purchasing, have now moved from this path to where we were guiding them towards new methods of shopping to where they're demanding new methods of shopping. We're not guiding them on that path. They're pulling us down that road of how we're going to get access to inventory and data in our stores. Meanwhile, we're all stuck at home. I've seen most of your garages, your attics, your dining rooms, pretty much all of everybody's house. And it's the most frustrating thing that we've seen is one of the biggest changes to our industry, especially in retail. We're having to sit at home and watch it through a computer screen while it happens. Well, now we're finally coming out to the other end of that to an extent. Our stores are starting to open up, our customers are starting to go back through. And what we have all learned the hard way is we have some serious inventory accuracy problems. This is something that we all know and we all believe in. That's why you're on this phone call today. I don't think any of you need convincing. These are problems that we have to solve. That's why the board's here and you're here and we're here talking to you right now. So one of the things that's been very frustrating through all this process, and this has happened several times over the past few years, is we'll work alongside you all and we'll put together a great project or a great program. We'll have good results and we'll get to the end of the project and we'll take it back to some executive or some finance committee and they'll take a look at it and they'll say, yeah, this looks good, but that's not the way that we do inventory accuracy. I think we're good. I'll go talk to my team over here. They tell me we're at 90, 94, 95% inventory accuracy. I'm not really worried about a problem that we have here in the store today. I think that there may be another way to look at it. Meanwhile, we're hemorrhaging customers and sales because our inventory accuracy is messed up at the store level, right? This is a matter of trying to get people on board and understand what's about to happen to us in the future. We all know what's going on, but we all need to work together to get to the next step of this. So rather than just look at it and say, we want to give you a few options on how we can move forward, right? There's some ways that we feel like we can help. And there's some things that we see because we're on the phone all day, every day, talking to a lot of you all with different programs that will help move this forward. So, just a minute, Mary, and then I'll share it back over to you. One suggestion that I have for all of you all is we have to get public, right? So we've been working with a lot of you on different retail projects and different brand projects for years right now. And what we find is everybody's going out there and hiding their programs and hiding their projects. It's crazy because we have all these new folks that come on board and they say, RFID seems really interesting and they think it can solve a lot of the problems that we're having today. It seems like everybody's using it and there's RFID tags all over the place. When I look for information out there, I can't find anything. Nobody sees anything. It's hard to build confidence in the technology and it's hard to build confidence in the solution if everybody feels like we're ashamed of the programs that we're developing, we're putting out there, right? So I'm not saying you have to go out there and open your books and share your customer base. And I'm not saying you have to go out there and tell everybody what you're doing and put out press releases and things like that. But it would help a lot, I feel like, if we could get a little bit more collaborative. That's why we're here. That's why we have the board. That's what we're here for with you all. We could come together as an industry and use some of this momentum to push to the next level. I've been fielding a lot of phone calls individually with some of you as retailers or with some of you as brands. What we're trying to do is find ways we can learn the lessons of the past. Here's the thing about inventory accuracy, and especially with RFID. Inventory accuracy is not a competitive advantage. Inventory accuracy is a fundamental of your company. You're not going to be the best at RFID. You're not. I'll tell you right now. You're not going to make the biggest mistakes in RFID because trust me, they've already been made. So if you're afraid that you think that people are going to see what you're doing is wrong, or if you think that you have something that nobody else has as a brand or retailer, I can assure you that you don't. Having inventory accuracy that is better and improved is something that should be fundamental across the board. This is like the shift to barcode. We need to move to RFID. And on the solution provider side of the house, it's the same thing. I think most of the folks on this call will tell you this today, but we deal with a lot of folks that are new to the space and outside there. No one is going to own RFID, all right? Again, this is fundamental. Inventory accuracy is something that we all need. So if you're a retailer or if you're a brand and you're working with a solution partner and they tell you that you need a proprietary reader or you need a proprietary tag or you need a proprietary chipset or you need a proprietary data solution that moves off the DS1 standards that we've been supporting all this time, those are huge red flags. There is nothing proprietary about RFID. This is something that we're all going to get together on and we're going to work together on and we're going to move this market forward. This is what inventory accuracy is and this is what it's all about. We're here. You're all here with yourselves. Use it. Use these contacts. Use each other. You don't have to go through us. Connect with each other directly. If you have problems and you have questions, I encourage you, talk to your peers, talk to your competitors. Everybody here wants this to be successful. And to be successful, we have to have people that'll trust this technology. And to trust this technology, they have to at least see it, right? Next thing I'll say, there's something that I think in a lot of ways is a sign of a healthy market is I and Senthil and most of the rest of the folks here at the university are dealing with an onslaught of consultants right now, which is probably a good thing in a lot of the ways. It means that there's a lot of confidence that's building in the market. I think it means that there's a lot of interest in that space. We have constant requests. I had several today for folks who are looking for data or information or something that they can sell back to some other customer. Now, there's a lot of consultants on this call here today, and I've worked with many of you for many years, and there's different kinds of consulting, right? Some of you have been working alongside us in projects for years, your project managers, your program managers. A lot of you guys have inventory accuracy issues, and it's good to bring somebody in from the outside to help us out and get where we're going. That's not what I'm talking about here. But what I can tell you is you cannot outsource inventory accuracy. It is fundamental to your business. We've been asked to participate in at least 4 different strategic learning initiatives for several months or several days or whatever it may be. There is nothing a junior partner at a big consulting firm can tell you about inventory accuracy you don't already know within your organization. You cannot outsource inventory accuracy. It's something that we need to get internal and figure out how we're going to do ourselves. So if you want somebody to come to you and tell you that you have an inventory problem and there's ways to solve it through RFID, we could save you a lot of money and time and effort to tell you right now that you do have a problem and you need to solve it. But this is something that you're all going to have to get actively engaged in and go out there and do it. Adding a strategic initiative and adding 6 months on top of this while you figure out what you're going to do, or somebody to tell you have an issue and you need to go figure out one of the ways to fix it, is not going to move you forward. You're going to get left behind. The last thing I think, and we're pretty passionate about this, is inventory accuracy. So this is where I'm going to show you some new data, and we're going to talk about some of the new initiatives we're pushing here today. We've been battling this inventory accuracy fight for 16 years now, y'all. I mean, I don't think I've talked to a company yet that does not do inventory accuracy slightly different than the way everybody else does. It's kind of funny because when we started looking at this last year, we finally got fed up and said, man, can we just go out to a textbook or something that can tell us what inventory accuracy means? Can't. Bottom. I asked the faculty on campus. Rarely is it addressed, and even if it is addressed, it's normally addressed about 15 different ways. So we've always talked about exact match inventory accuracy. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people want to talk about overall magnitude, some want to talk about financials, some want to do it by category, some want to do it by unit, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, what we were finding over and over and over again is we would do good projects and we would uncover problems. But then when we go back to leadership, we would get stuck in this feedback loop of everyone trying to agree on what numbers are the best numbers to show you here today. So forget the numbers. We're going to move beyond the numbers. And we're going to talk a little bit about what inventory actually means at a fundamental. And we want to provide you with some tools to try to help build some confidence in this space. So Merrick, if you will, please, sir, can you share your screen? What you're seeing on the screen in front of you is a retail store. Merrick, there's about 700 SKUs on the screen right now, right? So every one of those dots is a SKU in this store, okay? Some of the dots are small dots and some of the dots are large dots, right? So a small dot may represent an individual unit or individual item. That may be a SKU that only has one unit in that store, right? A large dot has multiple different units. This makes sense. You've all seen this out in your store. We have some SKUs that are smaller. We have some SKUs where we carry much more, okay? Now, you're going to see also there's several different colors of dots on this screen. And those colors represent probably exactly what you think they do. So, Merrick, can you split this out for me, please, sir? This is the same data divided. So each one of those SKUs on the left is red. Some of them are completely red. You can look at that guy on the top up there, that's a big red circle. Some of them have a little bit of red around the edge of the outside. Some of them look almost completely green and they just have a little bitty small rind of red around the outside. But what that is, those are SKUs that are overstated in that particular store. Just as a refresher, overstated means that our system, our computer in that store thinks that we have a certain inventory level, but the actual amount of inventory we have is much lower. So every time you see one of those completely red dots, that is a critical out of stock. That is frozen inventory. That is inventory that you cannot sell. You think you have it, you're telling your customers you have it, you may be selling on both purposes. But when they're going out to the store to buy it, and when they actually place that order, it's going to get canceled because you can't fill it because their inventory accuracy is bad. Some of those SKUs are pretty much dead. They're critical. We got to fix that right away. Some of them aren't dead yet, but they're sick. They're red around the outside. We don't want that to get worse, right? Now on the other side of the equation, we get the blue. So blue is the opposite of understated, it's overstated, right? So these are SKUs where we have more in the system. No, we have more in the store than we think we have in the system of record. Now, understated inventory is not the natural state of things. And this is not something that we see a lot of times, but it's something that comes up much more frequently when we have assortment issues, which happens especially in apparel. So you've all experienced this and we've talked about this ad nauseum. But a lot of times we have problems with inventory accuracy in apparel. It's not because we're just straight shorted things, or it's because people are out there stealing socks and underwear by the basket load. It's more because the assortment gets messed up, so we got too much of one and too few of another. So we end up with a situation with this where we have some understated inventory. Now, Merrick, can you bring that back together for me, please? I think because you all have been dealing with inventory accuracy for some time, you all can look at this screen right here and understand exactly what is going on in that store. You can look at it. It's red. Does that look healthy to you? Not really. If I'm a customer and I'm making a purchase in that store, you can consider me almost like throwing darts at that screen. And every one of those darts I throw is a purchase that I may want to make. And if one of those darts hits one of those red squares or one of those red circles, that's a lost sale. That's a financial bottom line impact. This is not a conversation about inventory accuracy. This is a conversation about what exists in that store and what doesn't exist in that store and how we're going to resolve it. So what can we do about it? Merrick, can you flip us over to a store, a healthy store? What we're seeing here is a store that we've been running an RFID pilot on some time now. We've been treating this store with RFID for inventory accuracy. Does this look better? Of course it does. Do we get it? Yeah. It's about what? How many SKUs are in there?
900.
About 900 SKUs on this screen. We could do more, we could do less. We could divide it other ways if we wanted to here. This looks pretty good. I don't have to see a bunch of percentages or numbers to know exactly what's going on here. I see a lot of SKUs. I see a lot of green. I see a little bit of red. We got some problems, but we know what those problems are and we can go out there and solve them. I see a little bit of blue. That's an issue too. But at the end of the day, we can fix this, right? We see it. We know what it is. We have a healthy system that is monitoring and making sure that this is working the way that it's supposed to work. Think about it this way. We're not just going out there and throwing RFID tags in a store and walking out there and cowboying it with a cycle count like we did back in 2010. There's a lot of methodology and thought that we built as an industry behind this. First and foremost and fundamentally, we've done performance testing on the front end with the ARC program to make sure that we're putting the right tags on the right items. Second off, most of the programs now are doing some type of supplier validation to make sure that the suppliers are encoding things properly and tagging things properly so when they get down to the store, we can trust the data that way. Third, we're doing audits on those stores to make sure that they're executing the way that they're supposed to. And you don't have to audit them every day. It doesn't have to be onerous, but it's something to do a little bit of checkup to make sure that these systems are working properly. We're doing physical counts, we're doing physical audits. We're doing all these things. All of this is part of a healthy program or a healthy system that will give us stores that look like this instead of a store that looked like, show me the other one, Mary. This. Now, I believe that all of you have seen both of these models. You've seen both of these slides. You understand exactly what's going on in the store. You have quickly grasped what's going on with 600 or 700 different SKUs. And not one time in this conversation have we mentioned a percentage. We have not. We have not talked about exact match. We're not talking about magnitude. We're not talking about financial. We're not talking about any of this because we're not interpreting data. This is raw data. This is real. It is what's happening on the ground in your stores or in your distribution centers or your warehouses or whatever it may be. This is immutable. This is inarguable unless someone really wants to go in there and argue that our systems don't have it. I don't know how you would even go against that. But the point is, we're trying to find ways to change the conversation and to change the problem so we don't get hung up in these same loops because you contact us every week and we get asked over and over again. What does the industry percentages look like for inventory accuracy? By the way, they're trending down. If you had asked us 5 or 6 years ago, they were about 60, 65%. If you ask me today, generally about 45 to 50%. We've seen a lot down in the 20s and 30s recently. We're not having to go in and give individual readouts and then go back and argue with an IT team over this person thinks we have 82% and that person thinks we have 78%. This is what we got. This is what it is. So what we would like to do is make these tools available to all of you. So Merrick and Alan, or Merrick and Matthew and them are working on ways that we can share this out with all of you. And yeah, it's pretty, it's nice, it's a little bit sales, and it's a little bit kitschy. But at the end of the day, we're helping visualize the problems that we're dealing with today. And we're trying to learn and think as a group on how we reframe these problems, how we get past this, how we convince people that this is something that we need to do, how we get them to trust the technology and trust the data to push these programs forward. So as you hear a lot of what we talk about for the rest of the day, I think the common theme is trust and confidence, trust and confidence, trust and confidence, trust and confidence. It's not an RFID Lab, it's not Auburn University. What we're talking about is trust and confidence in the industry. We need all of you to succeed. We need to come together as an industry. We need to share with each other and explain what's going on. Not sharing priority information, but at least we can talk about our programs. We need to get internal and focus on solving our own problems instead of trying to bring in people from the outside to solve them for us. And we need to focus on these inventory accuracy issues. So to that end, we made some changes to the program, and one of them I'd like to introduce now. So what we found is we've grown, and part of what we've grown is a need for more support to support a lot of these programs. So with that, I would like to hand it over to